Let these men be in no doubt. They have chosen a mighty opponent!
Generals gathered in their masses, in the fields of bodies burning, the war machine keeps turning. All lights
There and back again. What's going on, people, and welcome back to the world of Aeternum. During this tough time of endless waiting for the floodgates to open, Amazon Game Studios has decided to grace us with the 4th developer diary that is completely tied to my 2 favorite subjects when it comes to Amazon's new world. The first one, of course, is the beautiful invasions of the corrupted. And for the second, we finally got ourselves a showcase of the Territory War. But not just a regular showcase like we've seen before. This one is a deep dive into all the tricks and toys that we'll have at our disposal when it comes to dispatching this league of monsters, or on the other side of that, the players themselves. And as always, without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into the details. The developer diary starts off by showcasing what looks to be pre-recorded footage from what we've seen before. We've got weapons clashing, projectiles flying, absolute chaos on the battlefield. And then it continues right into the intro of the territory system. We get a really good shot of what looks to be the war camp of the attacking side, along with the showcase of a couple different armor and weapon sets. These particular helmets have been my favorites so far, hands down. Then we see a widespread look of the battlefield, which is very good for analyzing the outside of the fortress. It appears that this first point that players are approaching is a capture point that's needed before they can attempt to make a push towards the fort itself. We've also seen in other footage how we will need more than one of these points before we can push for the final. Looks like 3 of them to be exact. After that, we are then able to assault the fortress gates and advance inwards to make our way towards what is now confirmed as the final flag point. During the next section of the dev diary, they talk about how we're able to take our companies and challenge another to war. And when we do declare, that we'll have to do it via a siege window. But like we learned about in the faction developer blog, we will first have to get the influence of the territory down by conducting PvP missions. Once the territory is in a vulnerable state via this method, we can then spend the gold to successfully declare war. One thing they also said, which I'm not sure if they're going to still be implementing, is that once our companies start the war declaration phase, for a short period of time other companies will also be able to try and declare. At the end of that, one of the companies will be chosen at random to become the vanguard of the faction, which means they will be the one to lead the assault for declaring war. This allows smaller companies to have the opportunity to own territory and is something that could potentially prove to be problematic based on how all these systems work together. I still have no idea right now, but we'll have to see when they have everything in place. Now for the siege window specifically, we now know that once that gets scheduled after the war is fully declared, we'll have an entire hour to go toe-to-toe with each other over who gets to dominate the fortress in the end. The battle takes place between 100 players total in the form of 50v50, and during this we'll also have access to multiple different siege engines and options of assaulting or defending the fort itself. We get a good look in this dev diary at various different engines, such as the Horn of Resilience that we've heard so much about, that's capable of buffing allies in our time of need, alongside a couple engines on the more offensive side like our repeaters, cannons, and even mortars. We also see a quick shot of what looks to be a flame-based trap that's being triggered. This, along with the fire cauldrons, look like they will be extremely useful tools for fighting in wars or invasions alike. And speaking of invasions, the second part of the developer diary specifically dives into that aspect. Now before we begin talking about it, I did want to point out that I spent a little bit of time searching the diary top to bottom for any new weapon showcases, and it just so happens that we don't see any that we don't already know about, but we do get confirmation of one that we do. And I'm talking, of course, about the legendary life staff. I actually almost missed this one, but if you look closely at the staff, you can see that it does not look similar to the fire-based counterpart. This also gets supported by the fact that the character in question is wearing the fire staff on their back, as opposed to this one that looks more like a scepter. We can also see this green-filled orb projectile coming out of it that would suggest healing magic. And also look at this wave of energy that's showcased right before this frame that doesn't seem to do any damage to the enemy corrupted. And my guess is that's because it's coming from that staff, and that can only mean AoE healing might be a thing. Let's keep our hopes up on that one for now, but one thing's for sure, that bad boy is very different from the fire staff that we're used to. This is also the moment that I have to put a quick pause on the analysis, because it just so happens that only a few hours after they released this dev diary, they decided to drop a glorious developer blog bombshell with the title of War. and it just so happens to feature different showcases and descriptions of each engine we'll be seeing in the wars. Let's go ahead and lay down all the details. It starts off by describing the land of Aeternum as a place of struggle. When the corrupted decide they don't like looking at our settlements anymore and decide to attack us, this is known as an invasion. And for the players that want to overthrow us, this would be a territory war. Before we can conduct a territory war, like we touched on previously, we'll need to complete the required amount of faction missions. After this, they reconfirm that the Vanguard mechanic will be in place, and that the company who becomes the leading force will be able to build their squad of attackers from the entire roster of members that sign up. These members can come from our own faction or even the third one that we're not directly fighting against. So that means if Covenant is declaring on Syndicate, Marauders can step in to assist the Covenant or Syndicate if they want to. The wars will then take place based on the specific siege windows that get set by the defending company. This mechanic is supposed to help with ensuring better coordination and participation from the players. Once the battle begins, we will in fact have to push for these capture points first before we're able to even damage the fortress gates, so these are the main first priority. Along with this, we can use these points of rally to act as our respawns or access to the armory once we capture them. And the currency we'll be using inside the armory is none other than the battle tokens themselves. But here's where we get to the fun part, the weapons of war. To gain access to these while defending settlements, we'll need to both build them along the defenders' walls and do what's known as town projects to upgrade not only the settlement itself, but the fortress defenses too. Below this, they give us a clear picture and description of every weapon of war that we'll be coming across. And this starts with the attacking siege platforms. The first one shown is the cannon platform that features a medium rate of fire with the highest damage per hit. This is the most effective against structures as well as large, slow-moving creatures. Next up, we have the fire launcher platform, which is my type of weapon right here. This one launches flaming projectiles that burst on impact, similar to the fire traps, and are most effective for countering infantry or ranged opponents shooting from the ramparts. On top of this, we can also use these as area denial for keeping opponents locked down and out of the capture points. Then finally, we have the repeater platform, which is a rapid-fire turret that launches bolts at very high speeds, and even though they don't do a lot of damage, their sustained fire is good enough to whittle down just about any type of infantry, and that's also what they're most effective against. After that, we get to take a look at the defender versions of siege weapons. This starts off with the ballista, which compares to the defender version of the cannon. Serves the same role for anti-structure with a medium rate of fire and a very high damage per shot. The explosive cannon fires shots that disrupt and knock back the enemy, and just like the fire launcher platform, this one is perfect for scattering groups of infantry along with ensuring point denial. The defenders also have their own version of the repeater turret that's going to specialize in burning down infantry. And speaking of burning down, we also have the fire droppers, which now also have an official name to them. These bad boys are best for pouring burning, molten liquid on anyone below. And of course in the process it will do high damage over time, making it most effective against groups of enemies trying to assault the gates. Would certainly not recommend standing beneath them. That sounds like a lot of unnecessary pain. After that, we have the famous Horn of Resilience. This one provides a temporary healing and defensive buff to all allies in the vicinity. It has a lengthy cooldown on it, but it can be very useful when used at the proper moment, also known as abandon the walls and charge right out the gates. Lastly, we get to take a look at the traps we'll be using during the invasions and the war itself. For the Inferno Mine, this one bursts when enemies get near it and covers the area itself in fire, dealing damage over time and providing some good coverage for choke points. And the Powder Keg is going to be used for doing high siege damage versus gates, but we've actually also seen it in the shop for buying items to use for invasions, so it might be used as something for taking out slow-moving bosses like this ogre. Just make sure to defend it as best you can, because if it gets destroyed early, it looks like it won't be detonating whatsoever. But with that, we have reached the end of the Weapons of War devlog showcase. Now for the invasion section of this video, we get to take a look at how fighting these waves of corrupted is going to play out. The UI looks very similar to the territory war in the sense that we have to defend each individual gate and the fort capture point itself. We still get access to all our different siege engines, so that means that we'll have some good firepower while we hold off against them. We can also see the same enemies we learned about during the invasion blog, which for a few of them, I've speculated that ones like this could be grunts, these could be the raiders, and of course we have other ones to fight like snipers and bombers. Before this diary came out, the only boss type creature we saw that we could fight in those invasions was the corrupted looking ogre. But now, we get a shot at a very new addition to the squad, and this one I'm sure you'll recognize, the Diablo boss. Or if my theory is to be correct, I believe that what we're actually looking at is known as the Spriggan. Now I could be wrong, but during the whole coverage I did for the upcoming PvE arena system of New World, I hadn't realized that there was yet another article posted for it that came from the French website we touched on before. And in this article, they actually put a name to the boss or one of the bosses that we might be facing in the arena. And yep, you guessed it, they called it the Spriggan. Now after I saw this, I immediately took to Google and my innermost memories of fighting these green colored demons in Skyrim. And I thought to myself, this guy right here is probably as close as we're going to get to that, isn't it? Or he could just be a corrupted representation of New World's version of the Spriggan. Is he the Spriggan for sure? We don't 100% know that yet, but we'll just have to wait and see to find out. One thing I wanted to point out as well is that this ballista we see being used during the video appears to be completely unmanned. This makes it seem like there might actually be an engine that's used by the corrupted, especially with the red mist-filled arrow that's shooting out of it. They don't directly say it, but I think we might have more than just creatures and bosses on our hands when it comes to fighting these guys. During this video, we also get a showing of how the siege engine reticles may look, at least for the explosive cannon, and it looks like the character using it has a total of 6 shots they can use, but they do have a surplus of battle tokens, so it looks like they'll most likely be able to buy some more. Also, it looks like not only will the corrupted go after our capture flags, but look at this. They also appear to be attacking the armory building that we've seen showcased in the Invasion developer blog. So not only will we have to defend the inner flag itself, but we'll also have to keep a close eye on our supplies, because if we lose the armory, it might hinder us much more when it comes to fighting the invasion. But luckily we will only have to survive for 8 waves, so hopefully we'll have enough defense set up before we get to the point of losing something like that. But that is officially all we have to go over today when it comes to the territory war and invasion system of Aeternum. For invasions, we do know that these run on a 4-day cycle and that they will also cause corrupted breaches to spawn more frequently, so along with the wars we declare, we'll also have to really watch out for when these corrupted decide to attack us too. They state that these have great rewards the farther we get, but they do come with penalties in the form of downgrading settlements and crafting benches like we've learned about before. For more information on the faction system of Aeternum and how it fits into this, be sure to check out my full faction system related video that dives more in depth into this. And for invasions, check out my deep dive on the full invasion system of Aeternum to gain even more insight on what to expect from that system as well. And with that folks, let me know what you think about the territory system so far and how it will work. Me personally, I feel like we're really going to like it, but I do think that in the future the game would really benefit from having open world points of interest that we can fight over 24/7. So I'll continue to push for that where I can. And how about the invasion system? Do you feel like it's going to add a little bit of flavor or uniqueness to the game? I wouldn't mind if they increased the amount of people we can reserve for these from 10 to 25, but we'll also have to see how this plays out to begin with. In the meantime, thanks so much for checking out this video and I hope you have a wonderful night or day, and farewell.